All right, let's open up the case file on this one. It's a story that absolutely rocks Silicon Valley. I mean, right down to its foundations. We're talking about Sam Altman. You know him. He's the face of the whole AI revolution. But what's really going on behind the scenes? What's the truth about the man, his money, and the insane corporate civil war that almost blew up one of the most important companies on the planet?
So, how does the CEO of what is arguably the world's most important AI company get fired and then rehired in just 5 days? I mean, think about that. This isn't some hypothetical business school problem. This actually happened to Sam Altman. One minute, he's on top of the world, the next, he's out in a crazy boardroom coup, and then poof, he's back again. So, what in the world was going on during those 5 days? Well, I can tell you the official story. It's not even close to the whole picture. We're going to follow the evidence and see where it leads.
Okay, first things first in our investigation, the scene of the crime. We're talking about 5 days of absolute utter chaos back in November 2023. And let me be clear, this wasn't some quiet, calculated corporate chess move. Oh no, this was a full-blown public meltdown. The entire tech world was glued to their screens, watching in real time as this billion-dollar empire was literally about to fall apart. Just look at this timeline. It is absolutely insane. On Friday, the board fires Sam Altman. Boom, he's out. The company president, Greg Brockman, quits right alongside him in protest. By Sunday, Microsoft, OpenAI's biggest investor, swoops in and hires them both to lead a new AI team. A total power play. But then, this is where it gets wild. On Monday, almost every single employee, we're talking nearly 700 out of 770 people, signs a letter saying they'll quit unless Sam comes back. A full-scale mutiny. And just like that, by Tuesday, the board that fired him is gone and Altman is back in charge. It was a coup immediately overturned by a revolution from inside the company. Unbelievable.
So, okay, that's what happened. But in any real investigation, the what is just the beginning. The real meat of the story is the why. I mean, why on earth would a board of directors fire a guy like Sam Altman? He's their golden goose. The official reason they gave everyone? Yeah. That's a classic case of misdirection, a smokescreen.
So here it is, the official reason they gave the public. They said Altman was not consistently candid in his communications. You gotta love that. That's the most corporate, sanitized way of saying we're absolutely not telling you the real reason. It's a total smokescreen. And behind that smoke, a full-blown war for the soul of the company was brewing, and it was about to get ugly. Look, this wasn't about some boring stuff like expense reports or him being late to meetings. No. This was basically a holy war. It was a clash of titans fighting over maybe the biggest question of our time. How fast should we be running with a technology that could literally change everything? And, more importantly, what are we willing to risk to be the first ones to get there? And this battle really had two main players. In one corner, you've got Ilya Sutskever. He's the company's chief scientist, the cautious one. He was genuinely afraid that Sam Altman's classic move fast and break things style was going to, break the world. And then in the other corner, you have Altman himself, the ultimate growth guy, the salesman. He believes the best way, maybe the only way, to achieve the mission is to develop and deploy this stuff as fast as possible. So you see, this wasn't just some disagreement. This was a fundamental battle over the future, and it was being fought inside a single boardroom.
But here's where it gets even deeper. This wasn't just a philosophical debate about speed versus safety. A former board member, Helen Toner, came out and dropped an absolute bombshell. She claimed that Altman wasn't just pushing the envelope, he was being deceptive. She said he gave them inaccurate information about the company's safety processes on multiple occasions. Whoa. All of a sudden, this isn't about two different visions anymore. It's about trust. And it sounds like the board felt they just couldn't trust him. So, okay, the board clearly lost trust in him. But that brings up a huge question. Why would almost 700 employees basically threaten to burn the company to the ground to get him back? What inspires that kind of loyalty? Well, as always in these investigations, to understand the motive, you have to follow the money. And trust me, Sam Altman's money trail, it's going to lead us to some seriously interesting places. So that leads us to the obvious question. How much of OpenAI does Sam Altman actually own? I mean, he runs the place, it's worth a fortune, he's got to have a massive piece of the pie, right? That's what you'd think. Nope. And this is where the story gets really, really weird. He holds absolutely no equity in the company he runs, zero. No stock, no options, nothing. So his personal fortune isn't directly tied to OpenAI's success at all, which, raises another massive question. So how is he a billionaire? Where did all that money come from? Well, the answer isn't in OpenAI's financial statements. It's hidden in this sprawling, kind of shadow empire of his own personal investments, an empire that gives him a truly mind-boggling amount of power and influence. Let's look at the evidence. Exhibit A, he has personally invested huge chunks of his own money into some wild ventures. We're talking $375 million into Helion Energy, a company trying to create nuclear fusion, basically a star on Earth, and another $180 million into Retro Biosciences, a company trying to make us live longer. I mean, these aren't just little side projects. These are massive bets on world-changing, almost godlike technologies. And believe me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. He has his own venture fund called Hydrazine Capital. He was an early investor in giants like Reddit and Stripe. He's involved in ambitious and kind of controversial projects like WorldCoin and even a nuclear fission company called Oklo. All in all, he has stakes in over 100 different companies. Think about it. He's like a spider at the center of this enormous web of startups and tech giants. He's not just a CEO, he's a kingmaker. And that kind of power, well, it inspires a lot of loyalty, but it can also inspire a lot of fear. Now, a guy who has built a personal empire that vast, he's not going to be running your average everyday company. And OpenAI is anything but average. Seriously, its corporate structure is this bizarre Frankenstein's monster. And if we want to understand how this whole meltdown was even possible, we have to look inside the machine. So, to really crack this case, you need to get familiar with this term, a public benefit corporation, or PBC. Basically, it's a special kind of for-profit company that has to serve two masters. It's legally required to chase its mission, in this case, to benefit all of humanity, but it also has to answer to its shareholders who, want to make money. It sounds noble, right? But in reality, it's a built-in recipe for conflict. Okay, so how does this actually work? Well, it's a really weird hybrid structure. At the very top, you have the original nonprofit foundation. Think of them as the guardians, the ones whose only job is to make sure AI benefits humanity. This nonprofit completely controls the for-profit company underneath it. That's the part that actually builds the products and raises all the money from investors like Microsoft. And here's the most important part. The nonprofit foundation has the ultimate power. It holds the keys. It was designed with a kill switch to make sure the mission always came before the profits. Now let's look at who owns the for-profit part of the machine. As of October 2025, Microsoft is the biggest outside investor with a huge 27% stake. But get this is the kicker. The nonprofit foundation, the group that's supposed to be the watchdog, it owns 26% itself. So it's supposed to be the regulator, but it's also one of the biggest owners. That's a pretty cozy relationship and a massive potential conflict of interest. And why does all this weird corporate structure stuff matter? Because of this number. $500 billion. That's the valuation we're talking about after a recent share sale. When you have a nonprofit with a mission to save the world sitting on top of a for-profit engine valued at $500 billion, well, a massive showdown isn't just possible, it's inevitable. The firing of Sam Altman wasn't just some random boardroom drama. It was the explosion that this entire structure was practically designed to create. So let's pull all the threads together. We've got the man, Sam Altman, we've followed his money, and we've looked inside the machine itself. So what's the end game? What does this all mean? Look, this whole fiasco wasn't a one-time thing. It was a preview of the massive conflict that's going to define the entire age of AI, the war between its incredible promise and its astronomical price tag. And this quote from Altman, it's basically the smoking gun. Elon Musk is suing OpenAI, claiming they completely abandoned their original nonprofit mission. Altman's response? He basically said, I wish Elon would compete by building a better product. See what he's doing there? He's saying that building the product is the mission now. And that just lays the whole thing bare. It puts the central question of our entire investigation right on the table. Is OpenAI still a research lab for the benefit of humanity? Or has it just become a super advanced, glorified R&D department from Microsoft? And this really is the fundamental tension at the heart of it all. To achieve the grand vision, to build a true artificial general intelligence, Sam Altman says he needs, well, eventually trillions of dollars. You just can't raise that kind of money as a humble nonprofit. You have to be a competitive, profit-hungry machine. So the question becomes, how do you chase that kind of mind-blowing capital without completely selling out the mission you were founded on? It's like they're walking on a tightrope, and the fall is a long, long way down. So what did we learn? If you ask me, this whole crisis proved one thing beyond a shadow of a doubt. The ultimate loyalty at that company isn't to a mission statement written on a piece of paper. It's to one man. Sam Altman sits at the center of this incredible web of corporate power, personal investments, and influence that is unlike almost anything we've ever seen. So that leaves us with one final unsettling question. With so much power concentrated in the hands of one person, is that mission to benefit humanity a guarantee, or is it just a suggestion, something that can be bent or maybe even broken when the price is right? That's a question I'll leave for you to decide.